And testimony still happening in day 2 of the impeachment trial for suspended Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Attorneys spent the majority of the day today questioning the trial's first witness, Jeff Mateer. He's Paxton's former first assistant who resigned after making his whistleblower report. KVUE's Ford Sanders joins us now live outside the chamber. And Ford, there were some pretty intense moments between Mateer and Paxton's defense attorney, Tony Buzbee.
Quita, Brian, Buzbee took a few shots at Mateer and his character during the cross-examination to the point where Mateer and the prosecution both were noticeably frustrated. But let's talk about the trial. The trial kicked off about 45 minutes behind schedule today after ending abruptly yesterday, so Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick could consider an objection. The prosecution and defense settled that issue on their own before coming into the chamber today. So things picked back up with the prosecution questioning Jeff Mateer. He's Paxton's former first assistant. Mateer told jurors Paxton's relationship with Austin real estate investor Nate Paul was concerning, and he tried unsuccessfully to steer Paxton away from him. Ultimately, he and 7 other members of the AG's office decided to report their boss to the FBI.
By that time, I concluded that Mr. Paxton was engaged in conduct that was immoral, unethical, and I had a good faith belief that it was illegal. Found out that
Paxton's attorney, Tony Buzbee, held no punches in his cross-examination, accusing Mateer of having a hand in some of the wrongdoings Paxton is actually accused of. For instance, intervention in a lawsuit between the Mitty Foundation and Nate Paul, which is the subject of the first impeachment article. Mateer claims this was Paxton involving himself in Paul's private dealings, like the lawsuit with that foundation.
Don't you think that really kind of reflects the whole House's case? That they put you up here as the witness to tell us how bad Ken Paxton was, and on the very first article, you approved it. Isn't that ironic?
Mateer said he didn't see the irony and continued to reject the claims Buzbee made against him. But Buzbee continued to attack Mateer's character and question the reasoning for his actions. Now, about 45 minutes ago, the prosecution did get to the second witness of this trial. That's Ryan Bangert. He's the former deputy first assistant to AG Paxton. Now, he's one of the whistleblowers as well who resigned after reporting Paxton. We're going to hear more from him coming up tonight at 6. Live from inside the Capitol, Ford Sanders, KVUE News.
Thank you, Ford. And let's bring in KVUE's managing editor of political content, Ashley Godot, for some insight on today's testimony.
Well, I think today was just a matter of contention. I mean, that is how I would describe the day in terms of the relationship between Mateer and Buzbee and Hardin. We are really starting to see how these two men, act towards each other. But I picked out 3 big moments for you. Here's what I think they are. Jeff Mateer was describing what seemed to be a chaotic Attorney General's office. He was telling the jurors during his questioning from the prosecution about claims that he wondered if Ken Paxton was being blackmailed. He at one point thought that he was drunk or under the influence. He talks about a conversation that he had with Paxton where the two of them were yelling at each other and that he was refusing. And you can just imagine, by the way, this is a very buttoned up attorney, a very buttoned up conservative evangelical person, and then to be yelling at one's boss. That's not a typical behavior that we would expect to see. Another big thing that I think is interesting, a big takeaway, is the efforts by Tony Buzbee to discredit Mateer, to try to poke holes in his articles. You heard Ford playing that soundbite for us where he almost tried to accuse Mateer of being involved in the first article of impeachment. He also tried to say that this entire ordeal with the renovation of the House was just a bad game of telephone, that someone said something and it passed, and that they took all these articles to the FBI rather than just asking Ken Paxton about it himself. And in fact, he said that you could have just asked him about all of these things, but you didn't do it. And then that takes us to the third key takeaway from today, and that is just the contentious tone that we are already seeing on day 2 of this trial. Repeatedly, Buzbee accused Mateer of staging a coup against the Attorney General. Take a listen at this.
You were involved in staging a coup, weren't you?
Absolutely not.
That's what you were up to.
Absolutely.
That's the reason you went to the governor's office. That's the reason you were talking to TLR. That's the reason that you had or engaged in conduct removing your boss's name. You were staging a coup, weren't you?
Absolutely not.
Those type of accusations that he was making at Mateer, those types of statements he did it. I mean, there was one point where Busby kind of punched him saying, well, you lost your dream job when you were, the option for you to be a federal judge was withdrawn. I mean, it was a no holds bar. And finally, we reached the point where Hardin started to object and talk about what he was saying to the witness and saying, you know, he has to ask questions. He's got to let him answer. So just really a tone of what we're going to see throughout this trial, and then pointing to this second witness that's now on the stand, Ryan Bangert, who is directly under Mateer, right, and also a whistleblower. Just interesting to hear what he's saying in terms of what happened with that public information request. Nate Paul apparently trying to get documents related to the FBI raid of his properties, and that, you know, General Paxton telling them to reverse their decision. So this is some really, again, I would say damning testimony we're hearing today from the right and left-hand man of Ken Paxton.
Two of the whistleblowers first on the dais there.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
All right. Thanks,
Thank you, Ashley.
Great analysis. Now, we are airing gavel-to-gavel coverage of the impeachment trial. You can find it at KVUE Plus, on KVUE's YouTube page, and KVUE.com.
And you can watch the trial live every day with expert analysis from Ashley and from Tony Plahetsky. Just look for KVUE on Fire TV, Apple TV, and on Roku.